Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Epidemiology Live. My name is Sochi. Today we're going to be talking about the disease, and I have two epidemiologists by my side. Hi Judy. Good to be here, guys. Nice to meet you. So this is Jaden. What exactly is Bordetella what's this?
It's actually Bordetella pertussis. It's a type of bacteria that causes a respiratory illness, often referred to as whooping cough.
Right.
The illness is extremely contagious and is commonly passed from parents to the infants, whose immune system is not fully developed. Bacteria attached to the cilia, those tiny little hairs that are in your throat, that line the part of the upper respiratory system, where they release toxins which damage the cilia, ultimately resulting in swelling of the airways.
Right. So what exactly, who exactly is at risk?
The people at risk, all ages can be infected by this bacterial infection, regardless of gender. And
Right.
the group of people who are highest at risk are infants less than 2 months of age.
Okay.
And the reason for this is because they are too young to get vaccinated. So they're solely relying on the mother for the protective antibodies. But if the mother doesn't get vaccinated when pregnant, then they cannot pass these on.
Oh, interesting. Wow. So how does the other age group get affected by this disease?
Well, the other age groups get infected because the vaccine begins to stop working about 5 to 10 years after the initial vaccine was given.
Oh, okay.
The reason this happens is not fully understood yet, but since we know that the vaccine is not permanent, then the patients have to get revaccinated every 5 to 10 years to help prevent infection.
Okay.
And in some cases, the individuals just refuse to get vaccinated in the first place, which makes them susceptible to becoming infected and allows the person to become a host for the disease to survive and pass due to its contagiousness. And this disease is really easily transmitted from person to person due to the fact that it is an airborne illness.
Oh, wow. So how exactly do people contract the disease?
The disease is actually very contagious. It's only found in humans. It is a communicable disease which can spread from person to person. We call this type of problem a propagated epidemic. It is usually spread when an infected person coughs or sneezes, and even when the susceptible spends a lot of time near the infected person where breathing space is shared. This is known as an airborne transmission. More often than not, babies that develop whooping cough caused by this bacteria often get it from their siblings, parents, or caregivers, all of whom may not know they have the disease. It can also occur from nurses to infants, or from infants to nurses.
Okay. So how long does it last?
It usually lasts about 9 to 10 days, but can range to 6 to 20 days. Sometimes in mild cases, or in rare cases, it can last up to 42 days.
Oh, pretty interesting. So when someone has the disease, how long does it affect them?
Obviously, the clinical course varies with age. For example, young infants who are at the highest risk may not show all of the symptoms. However, the disease usually develops over the course of 3 different stages. The initial catarrhal stage shows a runny nose, sneezing, low-grade fever, and a mild cough similar to a cold. The paroxysmal stage occurs after 1 to 2 weeks of gradually worsening coughing and lasts for about 1 to 6 weeks, possibly up to 10 weeks, where a host will then have bursts of rapid coughing ending with an inspiratory whoop and sometimes post-tussive vomiting. Finally, the host will move to the convalescent stage of recovery, but it is gradual and may take weeks to months. Mortality is rare in industrialized countries. 1 to 3 deaths per year are related to pertussis in Canada and occurs in infants who are often too young to be immunized or partially immunized children.
So tell me about the history of the disease.
So before the 1950s, pertussis was a major cause of infant death worldwide. Widespread vaccination quickly became successful in significantly reducing morbidity and mortality. However, globally, the disease is still ranked as 5th highest cause of child mortality due to vaccine-preventable diseases.
Wow.
So despite release of multiple vaccinations, it has continued through the 1990s in a number of countries, even those who are highly vaccinated populations.
So what do you know about how it, about when it actually originated?
So the first epidemic of pertussis ever reported was in Paris of 1578.
Oh, wow.
Recorded
That's in French, right?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
recorded by Guillaume de Belleau through the 16th and 17th century. Descriptions of pertussis epidemics in Europe were documented frequently, leading us to believe it began to expand during that time period. Similar symptoms to pertussis have been found in Korean medical texts from the 15th century, which either suggests a source of the disease or at the very least that it was not localized to Europe. It wasn't until 1906 when the organism was actually first isolated.
Wow, that's long, eh? So tell me about the history of the vaccine.
So the first set of vaccinations was introduced in most countries 40 to 50 years ago.
Wow.
Now this is a long time ago, so there's been time for the evolutionary process to occur and for the pathogen to actually adapt to the environment. Because of this, there have been many vaccines for the disease since this time. Since this, vaccine coverage in developed countries in general has remained high, reaching values between 80% and 96%.
So basically, how does this disease affect today's world?
It has become the most common vaccine preventable disease in developed countries, and due to the high circulation rate of the disease, it is often found that adults and adolescents are the source of infection for infants who are too young to be fully vaccinated, allowing for the morbidity and mortality rates to be the highest for this population. Studies have shown that approximately 60% of infants younger than 6 months with pertussis are hospitalized, and more than 90% of deaths due to pertussis are found in this group. A few reasons why it has reemerged is due to the fact that prevalence is leaning towards older age categories, improvement in diagnostics, decreased vaccination coverage, and the ability of the pathogen to adapt to the environment, as I said earlier, as well as waning vaccine-induced immunity.
So what's this waning vaccine immunity about?
Basically, it's progressive loss of protective antibodies within the body against the disease, which occurs over time.
Good to know. Are there any policies or goals currently to minimize the disease occurrence?
The World Health Organization recommended that pertussis incidence of less than 1 case per 100,000 population be achieved in developed countries by the year 2000. The only country that actually accomplished this was Japan. Or countries like Spain, France, and the States are hovering just above 2, while some countries are still well above 50 per 100,000.
Wow, that's good to know. It's pretty interesting facts, eh? Well, thanks a lot, Jaden.
Yeah.
And up to you, Ben. I'd like to know how has the vaccination impacted our population today?
Well, before the availability of the vaccine, pertussis was a common cause of morbidity and mortality among children. Throughout the 1940s, more than 1 million cases of pertussis was reported, but after the vaccine became more readily available, the number of cases decreased significantly. And by the year 1970, the annual incidence was fewer than 5,000 cases per year, and throughout the years 1980 to 1990, it was an average of 2,090 cases per year.
So I've heard that the number of cases of pertussis is on the rise. Is this true?
Yes, this is true actually. There's been an increase in the number of cases. In 2012, the total number of cases was above 48,000, and 13 of these cases were actually fatal.
Okay.
Although it is unclear about how this increase has occurred, there's been some hypotheses. It is thought that the increase is caused due to the vaccine wearing off over time, leaving the individuals unprotected and vulnerable. And another reason is that the vaccine protects the individuals from the disease, but not the transmission of the disease. So that basically means that an individual who's vaccinated is protected from the disease, but is still capable of transmitting it to others.
Right. So thanks, Jamie, for actually coming and sharing knowledge. Thanks, Ben, for coming out as well. Thanks, guys, for taking your time to listen to us. And I hope you have a great day.